Welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast that helps small business owners grow their confidence, sharpen their digital skills, and actually enjoy showing up online. I'm Sooz Young, your host, tech coach, and digital cheerleader, and every week I chat with brilliant experts to bring you practical tips, smart strategies, and the tools and tech to make business easier. From social media marketing to websites, content to confidence, AI to automation, we're breaking it down into simple steps you can actually use. If you're ready to make things simpler and more successful in your digital world, you're in the right place. Let's get stuck in. Welcome back to Digital Dominators, the podcast where we explore the skills, systems, and strategies that help you grow your business online with more clarity, consistency, and confidence. Today's episode is for anyone who's ever sat staring at a blinking cursor, wondering what to post, how to say it, or whether it's even worth it. If content creation feels overwhelming, chaotic, or like a box you're constantly scrambling to tick, you're not alone. And you don't have to stay stuck in that cycle. Kate Llewellyn is a content strategist, educator, and the founder of the Consultancy, where she helps small business owners plan with purpose and create content with total confidence. Kate's approach is all about calm consistency. She teaches people how to show up online with a clear strategy, a confident voice, and the conviction to create content that connects without overthinking, second-guessing, or burning out. She's also the creator of the Content Confidence audio series, where she shares honest, practical advice for business owners who want to stop winging their content and start feeling good about it. In this episode, we're talking about why confidence is the missing ingredient in most content plans, how to simplify your strategy, and why consistent doesn't mean constant. So let's get into it. Hi, Kate.
Thanks so much for having me.
So lovely to have you on. So tell us a little bit about how you got into being the content consultant, setting up the content consultancy. Let us know your journey around how you got to where you are today.
Yes, of course. So the really short story is I got made redundant from my academic publishing job. So I used to work as a commissioning editor, doing textbooks and all kinds of wonderful things. And I took redundancy, had kids and thought, oh man, what now? And I was thinking about going back into publishing, and then fast forward a bit. And actually I ended up doing some content writing work, and the professional content writing side of things was brilliant. And that's where the content consultancy was sort of born in its first iteration. So it was all about helping people to create their content, helping businesses specifically with website copywriting and blog writing. And then the wonderful, we've all got one, haven't we, our COVID story. So the pandemic came along, and effectively some of my clients, had to shut down overnight. Others were doing bits, but not as much as they were. And I had that horrible scenario where, they couldn't afford to work with me, or they just effectively didn't need me. However, that's what they thought. Within a few weeks, I would either notice that maybe their content was sort of not being as consistent as it should be, or it was missing something, or they would actually be getting back in touch with me and asking for advice and for guidance. And I thought, unfortunately, there's only one of me, and I can't help everyone in this way. So it then led into running a membership called the Content Club. And that is a small membership that basically helps business owners to create content themselves. And it was all based around, and sort of still is to this day, all based around, helping people to plan, coming up with those content ideas, and what I like to refer to as making the content treadmill just a little bit easier.
I mean, I think that's what most small business owners and any individuals that are doing content need, right? Is lifting the weight off of the pressure that comes with content consistency is hugely part of it. So you talk about confidence being a huge part of what content creation is. So can you explain that a little bit more for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it came from my sort of story, my journey through my business, because I set up this membership and it was fab. And I had people come along and we'd all sit on like an online co-working session, and they put together 90-day plans. Fabulous. And then we have these sort of fortnightly check-ins, and the majority all going well, asking for a bit of help, but generally implementing said plans. But there was a minority that either did one of two things. So one is that they would put together absolutely beautiful plans, And then they come to me and they would have implemented nothing or maybe a very, very small amount. And then I actually realized I also had quite a few people who would book in, they'd be ready to come, and then they didn't actually show up. And you know what it's like as a business owner, we love to look in and go like, what am I doing wrong? But so I started to ask the question outwardly and say, what's going on here? For those of you that are planning, but you're not implementing, or for those of you that are even struggling to get a plan together, what is going on? They often had fantastic businesses. They often, when I spoke to them one-to-one, could tell me all about, their amazing services. They had incredible experience. They had all this background knowledge. But when it came to doing their content, there was just this blocker. And the more I drilled down, it came back to that good old word, confidence. There was something about putting themselves out there, creating that content that it just felt too big. It felt too hard. And so that's where this kind of drive to address that barrier came from.
Okay, so what is it that causes people to have that lack of confidence, Kate?
I think there's a couple of reasons. The first is that we do live in such a busy world. I love digital marketing. I love the online world, but you are constantly bombarded with other people's content. So, I like to refer to it as imposter feeling rather than imposter syndrome, because I don't think it's something we have all of the time. We have good days and bad days. And so I think a lot of it comes down to that. It's, oh, she does it better than me. That competitor is smashing it. That person's got a huge budget. They're amazing. Who am I to try and, sort of add to the noise in a way? So I think there's a bit of that. The other is that I think there is something going on internally in terms of whether it's just limiting beliefs, so self-doubt, that kind of thing. A knowledge gap can sometimes they sort of think I can do it, but I can't do it good enough or well enough. And then finally, I often call it, because I try to keep it light, but a business niggle. Actually, the thing, the service, the bit of your business that you're meant to be marketing, you don't quite wholly align with. And that as well, I think that sort of knocks your confidence. You often end up diluting your message because you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And of course, the irony is so many people do the other way round. And that all of those things, or, a combination of those things knocks confidence.
So we see when people have a lack of confidence, they don't post, and they don't post consistently then. And then we know that the platforms like to have consistent content going out. But you talk about the link, there's a link between confidence and consistency. So really, how is that connected in some sort of way that people can overcome that to be able to then have a consistent strategy so that it works with what the tool requires?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So you actually mentioned it in your introduction, which is that consistency, first of all, is really different to constant and even regular to a certain extent. It's not about always showing up and putting yourself under massive pressure. What I really like to work around is what we call our minimum content commitment, where we basically make a really hard boundary. What are we going to commit to that feels doable, time allowed, knowledge available, that we can do? And when you start setting those boundaries, it then makes it a little bit easier, because perhaps this is a boundary of like just once a week, for example. When you start doing just once a week or just twice a week, or even, just 3 times a week, if you're someone who's put pressure on yourself to do even more than that, suddenly we can focus on over quantity. And that can really help in terms of confidence, because you're putting in effort into less. Does that make sense? And also, when we set a boundary, again, suddenly you can go, do you know what? I've done 3 posts this week, tick, done. Logically, what's very strange is I have a lot of my clients, they say even just 1 post a week, and suddenly they go, oh, well, I did that. Okay, well, actually, maybe I'll do another one this week, and maybe next week I'll do 2. And it's that sense of a freedom, that sense of I'm doing enough, I've done my minimum. Actually, maybe I can experiment. Maybe I can have a bit more fun. So it's how the consistency and the boundary and the kind of, yes, I know what I've got to do. And when I've done it, I can feel good about it. That's how you sort of get that combination of consistency and confidence. And that minimum content commitment often starts, as I say, very, very low, and we nail that. And then maybe we can up it a little bit, and we sort of link it in as well with our business and our goals as well. And everybody starts to feel really good about their marketing.
I mean, I like how just like making a commitment is a good place to get started on it. And it's a commitment to yourself on what you feel, but it's important to stick to that commitment that you make to that yourself as well.
And actually, one thing I would say as well is if you're sort of thinking, yeah, I've done that before, I've told myself I'll, do X number of posts or whatever. I think it's two things. First of all, is write it down, get it on a bit of paper in front of you. And then if you say plan around that commitment, what I get my clubbers to do is just to tick or cross what they managed to do. So you've then got something that you can look back and go, do you know what? I did fulfill my commitment that week, but maybe the following week you didn't. Or maybe another week, as I've mentioned, you actually you did more than you expected to do. So first of all, you've got something that and we don't judge, we don't feel guilty. We're just looking to see whether our minimum content commitment is around the right amount, for what we can handle. And I think that is something that, is really powerful. And then on top of that, and this is something, for your listeners, another sort of reason to do this, and it's really powerful, is when we stick to our minimum content commitment, or at least record how we're going, it's so powerful to then interpret, which again, I think helps confidence, because you can say, well, by doing this amount of content, these are the results I've got. These are the, the data, the metrics, the KPIs, the sales, the leads, whatever you were looking for, you can start to say, well, I did this and I got this result. And I think that's what's, is really, really confidence building, because so many of us fall into the trap of we post when we remember, we maybe have like these fits and spurts of like really amazing, and then we don't do much. And so we always have that kind of blame. We can just go, oh, well, yeah, that's why my business isn't doing what I wanted, or that's why that campaign didn't work. Whereas again, we fix these boundaries and then we've got something to test and measure against. And I think that's really helpful, because you can sort of really dive into it and it gives you some answers, which, let's be honest, is what we're all looking for.
And I love that you mentioned data as part of that, because that really reflects into the next part that I want to talk about, which is that kind of marketing piece around it all. But before we go into that, let's just talk about what you mean by content. So content as in social media content as in web content, emails. What do you sum up as being content in your content consultancy world?
So for me, it's actually everything. I'm really passionate about not saying people have to be on social media or they should have a mailing list, and actually also exploring and going, yes, you could have a website over here for this. You might have a mailing list for that. You might be on that platform for this, but also not on that platform because you hate it. So actually for me, content is everything. And also I'm very passionate. Obviously I have a copywriting background. I have a writing background, but actually I love working with people to say, it doesn't have to be all about the writing. If you are someone that loves being on a podcast, loves talking, loves speaking to camera, fantastic. Maybe someone who actually hate the idea of being on camera, but they love, using their voice. So actually, what can we do with audio? I work with a lot of sort of photographers, so, okay, let's focus on the imagery. Let's focus on the, the amazing visuals that you can create, and then make the writing bit as minimum as possible. So for me, content really is everything. And also, I really separate kind of content versus platform as well. So, it might be that if you love video, we'll focus on that first, and then we'll think about where we publish that video and how we use it. If you love writing, we might think, yeah, let's go all in on blogging, and then we'll figure out where we advertise those blogs. So we kind of reposition the content as the thing that we love creating, and then we find the tool that's going to help, get eyes on that content.
I like that, because rather than just going, you should be on social media as a business owner and you start to get your customers through these platforms, and then you should have an email marketing list, which you do need to have these things, but it's taking the should away and building that kind of, well, let's start with where you are. That helps with that confidence piece that you were talking about. And I like that. So let's go into more of the kind of marketing side of it, Kate, because the difference between content creation and social media marketing is very different, but people get those two things very much confused. So let's just talk about it from your point of view. What is that difference between content creation and marketing or social media marketing?
So for me, marketing, you always start with a goal. Primarily for me as well, marketing and sales are absolutely interconnected. So I talk a lot about sort of customer journeys with people. And when we're talking about our marketing, it's basically how we are going to move along, move people along to that journey, from knowing who you are to physically buying. that's your marketing. That's what it's about. That's where the sort of strategy, what do you want to sell? Who do you want to sell to? Ideal client work, that kind of stuff. And when you're really clear on that, so what do you want your marketing to do for your business, i.e. for the sales, then we drop the content in that's going to help you get there. And, you gave a fabulous example just then. So you might want to create a social media post, but from that post, you want people to sign up to your mailing list. And then you want to take them from the mailing list, hopefully to maybe a private email, which gets them to book a one-to-one. So the content, the post that helps them to sign up to that email, well, that obviously there could be lots of variations of that. There could be lots of different ways of doing it. But the marketing journey to get them to the point of sale remains the same.
So a real difference of focusing on a marketing approach than a content strategy approach. So I think that's where people are not clear, and that confuses them, and that brings out that lack of confidence because they see what people are posting online. They align themselves with that's where they want to be, because that's what the platforms are built to do, to make us want something that we don't have. And then they get frustrated because they can't meet those actions or targets themselves, right?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I would say let's reframe it. Let's make it liberating, because actually what we're saying is there's one customer journey. There's one thing we kind of would love people to do, which is buy. And then along the way, we get to try out all these different forms of content, and we get to experiment with what works for our audience and what doesn't. And we get to explore, how do we lose people out of that customer journey? Why didn't anyone sign up to the mailing list? But see that as part of business and as part of the exploration.
I love that. So it's really breaking things down and getting what the business goals are.
Yeah.
Really clear.
Well, hugely. And if I could, get sort of, I've got multiple messages, but that is one of them that I just think, look at it as a whole. Let's say, look at it as a journey. I think the world has taught us, I'm going to say world, you insert who you feel, that one social media post will sell all of our, will make us £10,000. One email will do, and it doesn't work like that. It really is. It's lots of touch points. It's lots of elements on the journey. And some people will skip points and some people will, and it may well happen that you put out that magnificent post and it does turn into a sale. But I bet you if you look a bit deeper, there'll be lots of things that sort of contributed to that. And again, that's really empowering because it actually means we can create lots of different things and they will all come together to work as a whole.
I like that because we're very much in the media age, and the concept of the standard funnel pre-COVID is not the same now. And so that customer onboarding journey is very different. And we do need multiple touch points across multiple platforms. And Daniel Priestley does talk about this as well in his kind of key person of influence stuff. And we see this across multiple kind of leaders in the industry saying, where are your touch points? Where are you getting in touch? What content are you putting out that's connecting with your audience? And so really getting into the confidence piece is super important for that, but also thinking about the goal and the marketing strategy to help that as well is what you're working on, right?
Yeah. And actually, you absolutely nailed it from the point of view of confidence, because when you feel passionate about what you're selling, when you sort of, you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, kind of the minutiae of each post or each video, it doesn't matter so much because, you're passionate, you're confident, you believe in your business, you believe in what you're, creating, what you're saying, what you're doing. And yeah, just like you said with Daniel, that really does filter through, and it becomes so much less pressured as well, because I think, like I said, we put so much pressure on these like individual pieces of content, and we don't need to. We need to start thinking that each time we're just planting a seed, we're creating another touch point, we're giving ourselves another opportunity to get in front of our ideal client. And that's great. That's empowering.
As a creator, I used to spend hours re-recording voiceovers to get the perfect tone. But finding reliable voice talent, booking studio time, and editing takes forever, and it can break the bank. That's why I recommend 11 Labs. It generates ultra-realistic AI voices and even clones your own, all in seconds. With natural-sounding speech, multilingual support, and seamless text-to-speech conversion, 11 Labs powers podcasts, audiobooks, training modules, and more. No mic required. Ready to level up your audio? Try it free today at allmylink.me/TC11labs and bring your scripts to life with 11 Labs.
Yeah, it is. And it takes that pressure off, which I feel a lot of businesses have, to be the multi-channel platform and all of that as well. There was something I wanted to raise there, and it was to do with the planning with purpose. So you talk a lot about planning with purpose. And what does that really look like for someone who feels like their content is all over the place? So what do I mean by that? You might be posting personally on your LinkedIn page or your LinkedIn personal profile. You might be sharing some stories on your personal Instagram that feeds through into your Facebook. You might have a business LinkedIn page, Facebook page, Instagram page, and being one person or maybe one or two or a small team. Even if you're part of a larger company, it's usually only a small team that are the marketing team that are doing the content. How do you approach that multi-channel strategy from a planning perspective with the type of content that should go out across each? So there's probably 50 questions within that one question there, but let's start with the multi-channel approach, right? If you're a business owner that's being that key, that person of influence in your industry, being known for that thing, you're using LinkedIn for the B2B channel, you're using maybe the other Meta platforms or other channels to be that person, but you have your company as well, right? But you've only got enough time, so much to do content, right? What is the best approach that you would recommend for business owners that are in that situation?
Sure. So first of all, that's a huge question. But I'm going to take it, and it's absolutely fine. And it basically, when I say plan with purpose, we can do this with one channel and we can do it with multi-channels. And I basically have 3 steps. The first step is, I come back to it. I'm sorry. I said it's a treadmill and we keep going, but come back to choose a goal. And quite frankly, Sooz, I don't care what that goal is, but really no. And for me, I say if you're starting out, just a goal for that month. And now this is a sales goal. So it's not a content goal. It's not a marketing goal. What do you want? Do you want 3 people to message you? Do you want to sell X number of units of something? Just choose a goal. Because first of all, that gives you something that you can measure against. Was this effective? Was it not? Next, we pick a theme. Now, ideally, this theme or topic is related to that goal. So let's take an example from my world. Let's say I'd like to book in some more website copywriting projects from back in the day. And I'd like to book in 3 calls about me writing their website copy for them. So my theme of the month, being a very nice, broad, contrived example, could be that I'm going to, really talk about website copywriting, and specifically, perhaps we could choose something like SEO, search engine optimization. Scary, we all know. So that's where we start. The third step, we've got a goal. We've now got a theme that's hopefully going to help us reach that goal. And then finally, we start to obviously plan our individual bits of content. So this comes back to, first of all, our minimum content commitment. So we know how many posts we're going to produce. And this will include, whether it's X number on our LinkedIn, X number on our company page on LinkedIn, X number on Instagram, etc. And we start plotting them in. And when I say about purpose, this also then ties in. So we think about, well, what kind of content could have an educational purpose, for example? What kind of content could have an engagement purpose? So we want people to start interacting with us. What type of content could give a purpose of things like credibility? So your testimonials, who you are, what you do. We can have sales, the purpose to literally sell. Book in your appointment with me to talk about your website copywriting. So we assign for every individual piece of content a purpose that is related to our theme, that's going to get us to our goal. So I appreciate that's a 3-minute sort of idea. Now, the last thing obviously to say as well is, if you are doing multi-channel, is look at what we can repurpose and recycle and reuse again and again. So I've said like a classic sales post, there's probably no reason why that can't go across all of your channels. But whereas maybe something like a reel, just to show off some of my SEO tips or something like that, okay, well, that's going to be for Instagram only. But again, hopefully within your minimum content commitment, you've reached a level where you know what you can manage, and all of your content for that month will have that underlying theme. And what that means is, again, reassurance, because whoever, and we all know it's a tiny percentage, unfortunately, often, whoever does see your content is going to get the same underlying message. They're going to get the same sort of topic or theme. And it might really resonate, but with any luck, if that bit of content doesn't resonate, a next bit that following week or whatever might as well. And you've got lots and lots of bites of the cherry to get your message across. And secondly, for our confidence point of view, you may have heard of people talk about like pillars and things like that, and they can work really well. But what can be quite difficult is they might say, right, well, so you on a pillar that's all about you and your values. So you think, right, okay, so I need to write a post about me and my values. And then over here, you're like, oh, now I need to write a bit of content about, this service, because that one sounds good this month. I'll talk about that. And then, oh, I'm going to write a blog all about this frequently asked question. And that's the work, the mind work to do that, to be like 1 minute I'm writing about values. Now, whereas weirdly, when we just pick one theme, with an overarching goal in mind, it's so much easier. If you started talking to me about website copywriting and SEO, I'd probably start, oh yeah, I've got that testimonial about that when someone said, oh yeah, people always ask me all the time, what does AI now mean for SEO? People ask, you get into, and the content ideas flow. And when it comes to confidence, when it comes to planning, let's just make everything feel as easy as possible. You're going to want to do more of it. You're going to want to come back to it. You're going to feel good about it. So, that is, quite a long answer to how I plan with purpose.
Well, I think we could probably go into that even further, because I just started taking some notes there as you were doing that too. So I was making sure I wrote that down at the same time as you were saying that as well. So please do the same. If you've been listening or watching this back, take those notes. You can rewind it and do that.
Absolutely.
And I think you've helped. I'm still struggling with the concept of having the same content across all platforms when it comes to the business and then the personal. Do you think that there has to be a real separation between the business and the individual that posts about the business?
I think, I suppose I misinterpreted when you said about personal versus, I think it depends who you are. So to give my example, I have, say, a personal Instagram channel, but that is totally locked down. It's only for my friends and family. And, I actually set it up because Facebook at the time had been personal and sort of had exploded, and it got really messy with whether they were business owners, friends, family, etc. And I didn't want to do a huge cull. So I kind of set up my own Instagram channel. And so I do use that very much as totally personal, and that's just sharing what I'm up to, etc. For anyone else out there, and so therefore I suppose what I'm saying is, for anything else that's very public, I am Kate, the content confidence coach. I am the business owner, and so therefore I have set my own boundaries as to what I'm happy to share. One thing I will say about sort of personal sharing is there is a line between being able for people to get to know you, for you to share your personality and everything like that without having to share your inner darker secrets, or even have to share pictures of your kids, your family, your home, your dog, whatever it might be. I really believe in that. I think there's lots of ways that we can get across who we are and how we work and what we stand for without having to do that. So I think it really just comes back to what you as the business owner feel happy to share, and how you want to talk about you, and whether you want to really, really make that, that separation between your personal life and you as the business owner.
Okay, I think that's where a lot of people struggle with the changeover that's happened pre and post COVID, of where if you had a business, you would post on your business profiles. If you had your personal life was separate, you didn't need to post about, you weren't in the business. But now post COVID, we're in the person is the business world. And so if you're starting out, this is great. You can set that up with that in mind, and you are your business and people can follow you and your business comes as part of it. You can change if we're talking about meta profiles, to reflect that in that sort of way. But there's people in this listening community that are established business owners and that are now having to show up as the person in their business, and they struggle with going, geez, I've got to post on my business profiles. I've got all that to manage as well as this personal, and I don't need to share all about my life, but I've got so much work I need to do when it comes to posting and creating a content strategy based around those multiple channels in that way.
I'm very much about doing what feels right for you. And actually, I still work with quite a lot of businesses that pretty much only post as their business. Does that make, there are huge businesses out there where, you don't know who the CEO is, you don't know the head of marketing, what they do, so I don't think there should be a pressure to turn up in that way. If again, for your goal or for your business, that you think there's a validity in it. But again, come back to what we've talked about, setting boundaries, even have a policy or a guidelines. I say this to people a lot, if you come from the corporate world, you get all these amazing policies and that puts, what if X should happen? This is what you do. It's like health and safety or, your IT policy, your fire policy. Okay. So what about for you as a business owner? What are you happy to share on social media, personally or not? And then you can even go one step further. What if something happens that you don't feel comfortable with? What if, et cetera, so that you know how you could handle that. And it feels a bit safer and it feels a bit like, okay, I am going to show up as myself, but within that boundary, within that maybe like professional guise. The other thing I would say is the platforms now, so many of them have actually tools, and I know it can be hard work and I know it can be, painful, but, even on Facebook, when you go to post something on your personal profile, you can select who it gets shown to. So, have a look at that. If it is a case of going through unfriending, unfollowing, it's not, again, I know it's time consuming, but there are things in place that you can do to hopefully make you feel confident to show up, and that perhaps your content will be seen by the people that you will feel comfortable seeing it.
Okay, so really just going really into what you're saying to yourself around what you're going to post across those channels. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about vanity metrics and what that means and how that can really challenge people in that kind of confidence of being able to not only create content, but to post and consistently post as well. So what is vanity metrics to start off with?
So vanity metrics is kind of a term that's been really, it just relates to your sort of standard analytics that people would get when you've got a social media platform or even on individual posts. And it refers often to, doesn't it, your likes, your reactions that you got, the reach that you had, the impressions. So basically it's just telling you how popular your content is or wasn't.
Okay. And so just that second part of my question, what was the second part of my question? Can you remember?
I think you were asking me, and sort of what impact does that have, or what, is that right?
Yeah. So let's go into that then. Thanks.
Sorry. So basically, what happens is, I think we've all been, it's like anything, when you try something new, or when, a new tool, a new thing comes onto, so I say new as if social media arrived 3 years ago. I know it's quite a bit longer than that, but we all, sort of grasp onto the easy to understand concepts. And so for a lot of us, the number of likes, the reach numbers that they give, because they make the insights and the analytics really easy to look up, and they tell you these things, click rates, percentages, etc. So from a, data point of view, they can be a really useful measuring stick. But unfortunately, what's happened is that we have hung our whole worth on the number of likes, the reach, the impressions, etc. And even though I say, to my clients, we'll keep a little track of what's happening because it is really useful information. If one type of content that you created seems to get more likes, more engagement, more comments than others, that's useful to know. But let's not hang our whole sense of being on those vanity metrics. That is just information that we can mine. And it comes back again to what I said about when you plan, you have a goal. Now, if your goal is to get 10,000 followers in the next month, then perhaps those vanity metrics might be quite useful because you can look at the non-followers, for example, that you're reaching, or how many new likes, as in of your profile, that you're getting. So how many new followers or connections you're getting. But if your goal is to get those 3 one-to-one calls booked in, and you put out a post and it got 1 like, and one person DM'd you and said, I'd love to learn more, and another person emailed you and said, can we get that call booked in? And the third person went straight to your website and they booked in via your, online calendar. That's what matters. And that's what we need to break down with vanity metrics is, use them. Great data, really interesting, can tell us lots of things. But all it tells us essentially is how your content performed on that platform. It doesn't say anything about your business. It doesn't say anything about you as a person, in that way. Look back at your goal, find the content that works to help you actually achieve that.
So changing vanity metrics into marketing goals might be the best option for people to choose, instead of looking for the numbers of how many likes they got. If that was not part of the goal, then it is how many other actions did you take or were taken as part of that post.
Exactly.
Okay, great. It's really simplifying that strategy. So let's go into the kind of the planning aspect of it then, right? So we talked briefly around the kind of purpose of posts there. So if it's like an engagement post or a sales post. So let's talk a little bit more about purpose and how that comes along with the strategy.
So the reason I talk about purpose is because it is a little bit of a measurement element. You can tell I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to it, because, you know, if you sit down to write a post and you sort of start with, oh, I'm going to give someone a top tip, and then I'm going to finish with a sales message, and then I'm going to have a call to action, it can get really confusing. And again, go back to vanity metrics and things. You're like, well, okay, so it got that number of likes, but what did I actually want that bit of content, that post to do? So that's why we bring in the purpose element, because we can't, as you all know, good content, it doesn't mean selling all the time. Good content doesn't mean, and equally a good content strategy can't always just be educating. If people don't know what to buy from you or how to buy from you, it can make buying very difficult. So that's why we bring in purpose, partly to give us variety and to let us sometimes settle in our comfort zones where we might really like being. Education is a great one. People love to give top tips to show off their expertise, but in the vein of helping others. But people can be quite scared maybe of engagement, because if they put out a question, they might get the controversial answer, or sadly, they might not get anything at all. That can be a real knock to confidence. And obviously, again, the same with selling. They might feel like they're being pushy. They might feel like they're showing off. Those kind of things can come up. So by being able to do a mixture of all of them and not pushing people to only do the one, that can be really powerful from both a strategic point of view, because your content now is varied and different types of content is going to land with different types of people in that moment where they are in your, customer journey, but also for you. It makes it so much easier often to create that kind of varied content and to measure what content was doing well, because you were really clear on the purpose. Did it do what you hoped it would do?
Okay. So what is a good strategy for people to start with that?
So I have kind of 6 go-to purposes. So that can be quite helpful. So, I talked about having a theme. So if you've got your theme, thinking about those 6 purposes, and then depending on how much content you create, you can then assign a purpose. So say, for example, if we're just going to go really broad figures, if you did go, yeah, I'm going to do, this is where my maths always falls down. If we're going to do 12 posts a month, I'm going to go with that because it's nice and easy. And I've got 6 purposes. And just for sake of argument, I'm going to do 2 each purposes, 2 posts for each purpose. So that can just be, and it's as simple as that. It is as simple as that. So then you're going to go, right, so I need 2 education posts. So going back to the website copywriting, 2 frequently asked questions I'm going to answer. I'm going to record one as a video where I'm chatting away about this, and I'm going to do another one where it's a bit more of a longer form content and I'm going to answer a question. I'm then going to do 2 engagement, and maybe that'll just be a straight like, what do you struggle with your website copywriting, or what do you enjoy? You could do a poll depending on what social media platform you use, and things like that. And then we move on. So like credibility is another purpose of the 6 that I use. This is what I'm going to try and make me remember now. The credibility. So that's a really nice one. So it's just basically going like, why buy from you? Like, what experience, what expertise, what qualifications, what testimonials, endorsements do you have around those areas? I then talk about entertainment, and this is the one that makes a lot of people who are not very confident want to hide and go into a hole. And it's okay. We can say that maybe we only do entertainment just maybe once in a month, or even only when it really calls for it. But entertainment is that kind of lighter type, of post that, is going to bring a smile to people's face. It might even be a bit of like a day in the life of, or something like that, where you're just sort of, making light or making fun of what you do. Then we have share. So this one I love, because this is always going to be past content. So the idea is that you're sharing something with your audience. Now, this can be past content that you've created. So if you've got an amazing blog or an amazing video, or what I really love is actually you're sharing something from someone else within your profession or your area, because especially on things like LinkedIn, that really shows that you're not just inward looking. You actually know what's going on outside of your own business as well. And then the final one, tough one for some and the easy one for others, which is sell. So your purpose is simply to sell. So make it really clear how people come from you, whether it's a particular product or, as we gave the example, something like this.
Okay, great. Thank you. So following 6 types of posts within that purpose and then planning that back to your original goal. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So what are some of your, makes it sound so simple, doesn't it? What are some of your favorite tools or systems to support calm, consistent content creation? What do you use to help you?
So I use 2 things. So for the first one, I definitely would recommend, and it doesn't have to be Canva, but a kind of design tool that you have, whether it's templates, it's your branding information, it's that kind of thing. Because I think if for every piece of content you're having to reinvent the wheel, again, it makes it hard work. So if you've got, I actually have a different social media template for each purpose. So it takes away one less. Okay, I'm writing an education post. This is the template I'm going to use. I'm going to drop in this picture, these words. So just having kind of that combination of something like Canva or a design tool that you know's got your brand imagery, your brand, your fonts, your colors, your templates, all those things, so that we take away any second guessing around kind of design and brand elements. And then the second one is a scheduling tool. Now, depending on what platforms you're on, if you're on multi-channels, you might want to go for a third-party supplier, because they can then obviously, you can post to multiple channels all in one go. But also if you're maybe only using 1 or 2, so if you are primarily on Facebook or you are primarily on LinkedIn, it has built-in tools. The reason I say about scheduling is, again, when we are building our confidence, there's nothing like being able to sit down, you say, right, I've done my content for the week or for the month, if and be able to say, tick, done, walk away. Now, arguably, especially with social media, and just to say, by the way, with scheduling, obviously you can do that for email, you can do that for blogs and things as well. So whatever you've got, those 2 tools, the design and the scheduling. Now, just to say on scheduling, my recommendation is not that you then schedule everything and then you don't go back and look at LinkedIn again for another month. Unfortunately, they are called social media for a reason. So we do need to interact. But hopefully by perhaps scheduling in your content, that side of it becomes easier, because you're like, oh, that's okay. I've done all my content. I'm now going to spend my time interacting, engaging, and actually being on that platform, hopefully making it somewhere you enjoy hanging out.
Yeah, I love that. It's creating systems for yourself and processes, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that takes away the pressure of it all if you can keep on top of it as well. And then all you're doing is just being that social aspect of interacting with the people on the platform as well. So tell me a little bit more about your Content Confidence audio series and who's it for and how it can help someone struggling to kind of find their voice.
Amazing. Yes, thank you. So basically, if any of what I've said today has resonated about feeling overwhelmed, feeling like it's really difficult, that self-doubt, then these Content Confidence audios are a really lovely way in. So they are just a short 5 to 10 minute recording across 4 days, delivered directly to your inbox. And I just talk you through uncovering some of the barriers that you may not have addressed. And as I mentioned, we talk a bit about the self and some worst case scenarios and what we can do to protect ourselves from those. We look at the knowledge gaps, what is getting in your way, just from you've mentioned systems or practical element that's stopping you with that content creation. And then we do just have a little reflection on our businesses and how we feel about them, and if we are feeling completely aligned with all the services, with all the offers, with all the things we should be talking about.
Okay, sounds great. And so if anyone is wanting to get access to that, you can go into the show notes, go into the description underneath, and the website is thecontentconsultancy.com/content-confidence-audio. So really easy, but get the link within the show notes. You can also check out the rest of Kate's services and products on her website there as well. So before we finish up today, Kate, can you share 3 tips with people on how they can get confident and calm and be consistent with their content creation? What can you share with them?
So I've got 3 little top tips. First of all is make time and space to get clarity on what content you enjoy, what you feel is effective. I think so many of us just get stuck, don't we? We just do what we're doing every time, every week, and we don't take that moment just to reflect. So just, if you can find 10 minutes to sit down and just really think, is the marketing that I am doing, does it bring me joy? Is it effective? is this all good? I think that's the first thing. The secondly thing to think about is if you're on that content treadmill, even if it's okay, it's not too bad. I hate the idea that the content treadmill is on like a gradient. Imagine a content is really on a tough gradient and it's going a little bit too fast and you always feel like you might get shot off the back. So just think, are there ways, even within what you're doing right now, that we could just bring the gradient down a bit and we could just slow the treadmill down? So just one example, post one less time a week, for example, or even a month. Just what can we do that is so it feels easy to maintain that consistency and that high quality, because that will bring back your confidence and your sense of, I'm doing a really good job. And then finally, even with a single post, if you feel excited and aligned and alive when you're creating that content, I promise you it is more likely to land. So if you're going to post something and you're putting it out and you're not really sure and you're going to dilute it down because it just all feels a bit icky and you just don't like it, then think twice, basically, and get yourself back into creating content that just feels good.
Okay, great. Really, really simple steps there, Kate. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute honour to talk about that kind of calmness around content, taking away the pressure around it all, putting yourself and the boundaries that you want to set in place around it, and being confident in that. So thank you so much for sharing today, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me, because it is a message that, it's really important.
Yeah, it's great because I don't think people realise the importance of taking the pressure off a bit. And it's the mindset around it all. And that's what you talk about. And nobody really talks about that within the kind of marketing space in general, is that it's a mindset, set your goals and work around it and how it connects with all of your other systems and processes in that way too. So great. Keep doing what you're doing, Kate. Love it.
Thank you. I hope that was good. Do you mind if I take a quick photo? Is that all right?
I'm just going to finish off the podcast first before we do that, and then you can take a photo. So thanks for joining me today, Kate. I'll see you on the next episode of the Digital Dominators.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Digital Dominators. I hope today's episode gave you something practical, or at least a bit of a boost to keep things going in this mad digital world. If you're enjoying the podcast, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up. There's loads more good stuff on the way and some brilliant guests lined up too. And if you fancy going a bit deeper, come and join the Digital Dominators community. It's totally free and it's where I share bonus trainings, podcast extras and tools to help you build confidence with your digital skills. You'll also get access to my social media prompt calendar, so you can finally stop staring at that blank screen wondering what to post. Just head to technologycoachingonline.com/digital dominators to get started. Alright, that's it from me just now. Stay curious, keep showing up, and I'll catch you in the next